Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would suggest that we start. We have one participant missing, Sotiris Alexopoulos, and we hope he will join us in the next hour. He is in charge of the refugee camp at Piraeus, and as many of you know, probably this camp should be removed. So he is involved there, but I hope he will be with us soon. My name is Alev Korun. I have the honor to chair this panel about the human dimension. And I hope, although we all heard a lot in the last hours, that you still have some patience and some power, because we have a very interesting panel at our second panel. Josef Weidenholzer, a member of the European Parliament, will start with a keynote, with an input. Some of us who are on the panel now were in the same working group concerning the EU-Turkey agreement, so we partly put forward our discussions from the morning, and I think, I hope that we will be able to build a bridge from that discussion to this discussion here, also taking with us all the ideas you have been discussing in the other three working groups. I will, at the beginning, make it very short, and I would suggest that Joe Weidenholzer starts, and I will try to comment the inputs a bit and also try to bring them together from one theme to the other. And we have luckily people from human rights NGOs on our panel, people who are refugees themselves, people who are working in municipalities, a member of the European Parliament, and also one member of Doctors Without Borders. So I think that we will be able on this panel to look at the humanitarian dimension from different point of views, from the perspective of different groups which have to do with the human dimension or which are directly affected by the human dimension of the policies we have been talking in the morning. So, Joe Weidenholzer, I would ask you to begin, please.
Thank you very much. I should be brief, but let me start with some general remarks. I think it is very important that we're talking about human dimension, because this crisis normally is conceived as refugee crisis, migration problem, a wave of refugees. Yeah? So there is a language being used which actually leaves out human beings who are actually part of these problems we are discussing. And we should try to overcome this anonymity. As soon as we start these discussions, we're always on a very abstract level, and we don't go into these individual stories. So giving it a human face is very important. Why we have this problem now, this mess, amongst many other explanations, I just want to highlight one, is the failure of European migration policies. There was never a European migration policy. Europe was faced with immigration from Europe to other parts of the world, so this was normal. When people started to come to Europe, a generation, 2 generations ago, we were completely surprised that people want to come to Europe, and instead of accepting this or even welcoming this, that we are attractive for other parts of the world, we got scared. And so we never delivered on the community level a European policy. We only stick to our national policies. And we have three phenomena which are completely different, but in the current situation flow together. This is, on the one hand, migration, which is normal, which is wanted, pull factors, we need people, labor, demographic situation, and push factors, because of different policies, people have to leave their homes because of economic problems. Yeah? So this is one point. There is no European measure which addresses this problem. So we don't have a immigration policy like Canada or other parts of the world, Australia, US. We don't have a green card, blue card, whatever, in that sense that is really working. Then we have political asylum, which is a completely different process, which is in the aftermath of the Second World War, something which is an individual right, which is a right for groups. This is certainly not the way to address the migration problem, because it's a different instrument. And we have, over the course of the last years, and this made this problem then, political crises, wars around Europe, and the Middle East war created a lot of refugees, displaced persons, and these increasing numbers created the problem. But we do not address this with a migration policy, with an asylum policy, and with resettlement policies. It is everything together. And we have a complete mess of our instruments. And that's the problem. So the European Parliament was in a very early stage coming to the conclusion that we need a so-called holistic approach, where we see these phenomena in these holistic aspects, and not just as a mere policy measure for one group. That was the problem. It is easy to demand that we have to unbundle all these different problems and to find policies tailored to these different phenomena. This is not easy, and I think this will take a few years, and we have to solve the current problems. We only can solve them with pragmatic solutions, with speed, not with hesitation. At the moment, everybody is hesitating to do anything, with convincing projects. This is necessary in the moment. And just 4 points where I think this is important. The first thing is, get relocation started. We are talking now for more than 1 year to relocate 40,000 plus 120,000 persons to different member states. At the moment, something like 3,600 people had been relocated. So this is just not working. People got stuck in Greece, the Balkans, in nowhere land. And the situation is even deteriorating. The longer the people got stuck in this situation, the more problems we are being confronted. So we have to overcome this, and there are certain positive developments. There are states who are interested to take people from Greece, from Italy, and Greece and Italy are also interested in people going to somewhere. The problem is just it does not work. So I think it is very important to manage this problem and to create certain positive examples. The situation Greece and Portugal is at the moment, I think, one possibility which could work. Second, we have to open legal avenues. It must be possible that people are moving from mainly the war areas or other areas by legal means without smuggling, just by applying at certain contact points of the European Union for entry into the Union. This is possible. I can give you one example. It's an Italian initiative called Corridoi Umanitari, who brought more than 1,400 people from Lebanon and from Eritrea to Italy with the assistance of the Italian government. So this was possible. And I think it was involving civil society, but I think we should try to develop this kind of avenues as an alternative. If you imagine, I said 3,600 people relocated and 1,400 only one Italian initiative, then you see that there is something possible. The third point is, be shorten stabilizing the regions of origin. We don't discuss this. I think there can be a lot of positive developments be supported by the European Union. We should be really active and because it is also important. Many people want to stay, many people want to go back. They don't get the help, they don't get the assistance. And the fourth point and last point is we have to work harder on integration. This is just not working. In the case of Germany, for instance, you find people who came to Germany in September and they still do not had their first meeting with the asylum authorities. So this is incredible. I met people in Berlin, they spoke already German, Syrians, spoke quite good German, but they did not have their appointment. This is completely crazy, and so we have to do something about this. So we have to be proactive, as I said, and I want to be positive, but it needs certain elements. It has to be human rights based, it needs participation. Refugees, migrants are not just objects, they are subjects, so they are individuals, so we should give them a right in the situation, in their camps, and so I think nobody was really touching this point. Education is part of this. It's lost years for many, many people, lost years to wait. And I also believe it is very important, as my last 2 points, that we have to involve diaspora communities. We have many, many situations where you have people who live already in European countries, who have a background, who should be involved. We have a very positive case in Austria with the Bosniaks in the during the Yugoslavian crisis, where there was this community working, and this population, about 90,000, had been completely integrated. There are no problems. They are one of the most active parts of our society. And last point, we should also discuss how we can tailor our measures to communities. We sometimes follow a very abstract policy, and we are talking about numbers. It's not only about numbers, it's also about receiving communities and deciding, not in that sense that we say we all want to have Christians, because this is stupid, but in that sense that we are addressing the people here, in that sense that we ask, who are you, and how can you fit best into our societies and communities. This, I believe, is one of the most important aspects to get the whole relocation process moving. Because if we do not offer any kind of explanation what is really going on, you will always have many people in receiving countries who just oppose because they don't have any idea what's coming up. So a few thoughts, I have more on my notebook, but I hope we can come back to it in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Joe Weidenholzer. We were also in the morning discussing about that the EU actually would need much bigger resettlement and relocation programs. But we were also talking about the fact that political will seems to be lacking in many governments, in many European countries. You have been mentioning the very important issue of legal entry. How can we have safe passages? How can we have legal and safe entry so refugees are not dependent on smugglers and don't have to pay all their money and belongings to smugglers to enter the EU? Unfortunately, not on a legal basis, because legal entry is almost non-existent into the EU. And we were in our working group also speaking about the danger that with the EU-Turkey agreement, a big outsourcing of humanitarian responsibility for refugees to some other states, in this case to Greece and Turkey, could take place, and we should be very aware of this danger, which could grow to a very big problem. Now I want to ask Matteo Zevi as the next person. He is from the Boat Refugee Foundation. That's a Dutch-based foundation, he told us today, but which also operates in Greece here, and they operate in detention camps and refugee camps. And I wanted to ask you to begin with, what are the consequences for refugees of these politics we were discussing since the morning? How do these policies effect on them, and what are the problems you are dealing as an NGO member, as a human rights activist? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it would be unrealistic to think that passage into Europe as a refugee should be easy and very quick. It should be assumed that there will be delays and it's slow and you have to wait and there's paperwork. Whichever country you're entering, there will be these kinds of delays. I think what has really gone wrong here is that these delays have become so long, and the conditions under which people wait for news, or even for the news that they will get news, are so negative that people are starting to have, I think, pretty serious risks to their health, to their mental health, to their physical health. They don't often have good access to medical care. They're not eating good food. They're not in sort of appropriate shelter always. And they're missing out on education. And it's time. And time for children, and time for sick people, and time for old people, and time for people who want to have some part of their life back is very, very expensive. You could say that for the most part, the only thing that the refugees in Greece and traveling through Europe really have is time, and we make them pay with a huge amount of their time. So I think this is very, very troublesome for them. But that said, working in Greece and also having been to Italy, to Pozzallo, to meet the mayor of Pozzallo, I think we can learn great lessons from the example of Greece and the example of Italy. I think it says something quite important, that the people closest to the crisis seem to have been the most human in all of this. The people who, as the mayor said, who have stood on the dock and watched the people come off the ships, the people who have worked in the camps, the Greek people who, whether by choice or by circumstance, have ended up working in the camps or living by the camps or somehow participating in all of this, the people who live in towns where this thing just arrived on their doorsteps, have been incredibly human and have done incredible things that would be unthinkable in other parts of Europe. And the other side of that story, unfortunately, is that it seems to me, even though I'm operating at a very local level, very close to the ground, it seems to me that the worst attitudes and the least human attitudes and the most unpleasant things said are coming from the countries furthest away, the countries that feel they might have to foot the bill for this, but that do not actually see this at first hand. Do we have to send everybody from every country in Northern Europe to spend a week in a camp in Greece? Probably not. This doesn't seem realistic, but maybe this would introduce a human dimension to everybody. What I'm trying to say, though, is that this human dimension, it's not really about the refugees' human dimension. They have demonstrated their humanity enough. They don't have to prove anything to us. We have to prove to them that we can bring a human dimension to the table, that we can bring our humanity. Their humanity is gratis. Their humanity is free. It's a given. Ours ought to be, but it isn't. So what I'm interested in as someone who spent time in Greece and really one-on-one, sorry, terrible phrase to use, one-to-one, or so close to the people we're talking about, is how can we show, we as Europeans, or we as people who would say or claim that we are welcoming these people into Europe, how can we show that? I know there's been a lot of movement in Europe through volunteerism. Thousands of volunteers from all around Europe and from around the world came and rolled up their sleeves and joined the Greek people. And I know you've seen that, and you've seen that. People came here to Greece to help, and I don't think anybody who came to help in Greece would go home and vote for a politically right party. I think everybody who came to Greece went home and started spreading the good news of what great news it is that these people want to come and be with us in Europe. Volunteerism helped, the media can help, cultural intermediation can help. But in the end, there's bias in all of this. Only certain kinds of people come to volunteer in refugee camps in Greece. I could give an example. I helped to produce a documentary about refugees in Greece towards the end of last year, and it was screened to a few hundred people, and there was not a dry eye in the room. Everybody cried and came afterwards and said, "What can I do?" And when the documentary went on Facebook, there were many comments that said, "Why are you letting these brown Muslims into our countries?" So it's about audience. The people who come to watch a documentary about refugees already have in their mind that they want to do something positive, that they have a human connection. So audience is important. In the end, though, these are soft factors, and we know that everything is about money, probably. It's very expensive to create a human dimension. It's rather cheap, though, for politicians to dehumanize and to say these are numbers, or we've controlled the numbers, or we've moved this many thousand here and this many thousand there. It's much more expensive to engage people on the ground, and even the foundation I work for, it's extremely expensive for us to engage volunteers on the ground, to get people here, to pay for accommodation, to pay for supplies, to rent cars. It's expensive for a small organization, for large organizations, for governments. It's very expensive to humanize. But maybe then it should be something that government should be more interested in. Why can government not support it? I can give an example. In the United States, it was revealed to some sort of humor recently that the United States government got together a coalition of the biggest advertising firms in the country and secretly put them to work in a basement in the Pentagon to make advertising campaigns against ISIS. What a tremendous use of money. But why can our governments not use their money, for example, rather than building camps and ways to keep people out, but use money to make campaigns for refugees, to make people interested? Why can't we make people want to do these jobs? Hundreds of people from all over Europe are being sent on jobs to work here in Greece as advisors, as passport controllers, as security, as medics. But nobody wants to do these jobs. Go speak to these people on the islands. They don't want to be there. They were forced to go there. Why can't governments in Europe spend money to make people want to come here and do this work, to give something of themselves? Why do governments in Europe spend so much money to make young people do military service? Why not spend that money to send them to work in refugee camps and to think about these issues and go home and spread the good news? So I think my takeaway would be this, that the human dimension is very expensive. If you're up close to it, as the people in Greece and Italy and the people who've come to work here have been, it's quite easy. You've already paid, and you're part of it. And the humanity of the refugees is free and paid for already, and we're all in that together. But maybe government can do more to encourage a humanization, to encourage humanity, to make it not just the people who go and watch a movie about refugees who are interested, but to make everyone interested, and to make this everybody's story, and to make it something that we all have to be engaged in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matteo. You were talking about the fact that many young people from all over the world basically come to Greece or go to Italy to help refugees and human rights organizations. Some of us were at the port of Piraeus yesterday visiting Sotiris Alexopoulos, who will join us in half an hour, hopefully. And one of the young activists there whom we talked to was a young student from Finland who said that she has been off Lesbos for 3 weeks and she will be here and at the nearby refugee camps the next 4 or 5 weeks. That means someone who studies in her home country uses her spare time, the summer, to come here and work, which is a great thing, of course. As the next person, I want to ask Xanthoula Soupli, who is the president of the Idomeni community. I myself was in Idomeni some 3 months ago. That was at that time when almost 12,000 refugees were waiting there in tents mainly, because there is not a proper, normal refugee camp, or has been at that time in Idomeni, and they were waiting to go further, which, as an Austrian politician, I also have to say our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Kurz, was one of the main politicians, unfortunately, who were in favor of the closing of the so-called Balkan route, West Balkan route, and who still is, well, kind of proud of being of himself and of his policy of closing the West Balkan route, of course not saying additionally that the people who were in Idomeni did not just vanish, they are still there, they are still in the European Union and they suffer. So I would like to ask you to tell us about your experiences. How did Idomeni in these very, very hard times? And thank you in advance for the great job you do there with your colleagues together. Thank you.
Καλησπέρα σε όλους.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Xanthoula Soupli, president of the local community of Idomeni. My presence here today is because of Act.Now, which organizes this 3-day conference on refugees. I would like to thank them in public for their honorable invitation. I was called to participate in this conference, and I came from an area in Greece which is near the border. We have people there who came to us. This is a place of agony. This is the bulwark of unity. This is the place where we host so many hopes. So many hopes for an exit to a new home, to the goods of freedom, respect of human rights and dignity and dignified living conditions. These things make up humanism. I'm not here to speak about targeted measures and policies on this issue that is of so much concern for Greece and Europe. I won't complain about the things that have happened and all the things that were not done in this issue. My contribution to this discussion is only experiential.
I shall try to shed light on the uttermost parts of Idomeni, a small village with a handful of people that suddenly became the focus of attention globally because of the massive influx of refugees and migrants. As I have seen it and as I have experienced it with the people of my community, this is an unprecedented, difficult condition. However, a very important one in terms of teachings for the meaning of life. The refugee crisis in the area of Idomeni, in fact, went around 3 concentric circles starting in autumn 2014 and up until May this year. The first circle is the one of the smooth flow of refugees from Idomeni to the countries of Central Europe and Northern Europe. The first visitors, refugees, approached our area in October 2014. I remember that back then they would come to the borders and we would have about 80 to 100 people who were carrying with them their few belongings. We would see them mainly in the old railway station of Idomeni. They would spend the nights there, sleeping there, and then the next day they would go on with their journey. Idomeni was nothing more than a short passage, a stopover if you wish, a place where they would repose and catch their breath until they reach the final destination. People of my village, out of curiosity or interest, some of them, would start speaking to them, and with their English. And in fact, they tried to communicate with them with whatever English they had, a little bit of water, a cup of coffee, a cigarette. These were the means of communication. Refugees would leave, and our people would nod and wave as the refugees went away, with concern and a hidden pain, because the wound of being a refugee is an open wound and it's always painful. And the residents of Idomeni in the entirety of the region I come from are, for the major part, refugees of third generation. They came from Asia Minor, the Black Sea, Eastern Thrace and Cappadocia. The region of Kilkis is a mosaic, a multicultural mosaic, which is maintained because we remember and we revive traditions and customs that are reminiscent of old homes and countries, old homelands. And of course, the municipality of Kilkis, the region of Kilkis, was greatly affected. That is, its physiognomy of population was affected when, in the years of the financial recession back in the 1960s, people from Kilkis would leave Greece in massive waves because here we didn't have enough to get by and they couldn't make ends meet. My homeland is very well aware of the pain of being a refugee and of going to a foreign land. That is why inhabitants, for the most part, dashed. They were very willing and eager to help these unknown people, to be by their side, to be by the side of people they heard and would see that they were coming to Idomeni every day. In winter 2015, we started having a steady presence of refugees and migrants in Idomeni. In April, we had the settlement, the establishment there of Doctors Without Frontiers and the UNHCR. So members of these organizations set up tents, and with their personnel, they tended to the care, the health care, and the hospitality of the refugees. Refugees grew more every day. However, back then the borders were open. Idomeni would fill up, and before we had the time to count the new refugees, these people would go away. It would be empty. The difference vis-à-vis population flows of 2014 was visible. The influx of refugees was increased, and they stayed in the area for longer times. Gradually, Idomeni stopped being a short passageway. Things got worse. Last November, after the decision of the Skopje government to shut the borders using a fence boundary or border, so people could go to the neighboring country in a very difficult way. Up until that time, 1,000 people crossed the border. But in 2015, 100 of them made it, then 60, and then suddenly it was announced that the Visegrad corridor would remain closed. Back then, the thousands of people we accommodated in our region, and we, by their side, truly experienced an ordeal. We had many more tents, many more refugees, families with children that would play in the mud, young people who would protest every day along the fence, asking desperately for the borders to open, for them to go and be reunited with their families. The dream of escaping was turned into an incubus, a nightmare, which is reminded every day just by looking at this fence, the fence which is on the way to freedom. everyday life for all of us became difficult. The great refugee and migratory population of Idomeni lived in difficult circumstances. The cold was insufferable, food was never enough. People would cram like sardines in tents without clothes or shoes, with their eyes fixed on the borders and truly and secretly hoping that luck would smile to them again. They were very tired and worn out, but they were persistent in an admirable way, and they persevered and they lit fires to get warm, to dry their clothes in the big camp that had been created. On a practical level, problems were numerous and difficult to manage most of the times, or non-manageable. The area became a garbage dump. People got irritated because they stayed there long, so there were protests and there were conflicts. The municipality of Paeonia, the local community of Idomeni, was by the side of the people, being there every day, trying to record problems. We tried our best to help with the cleaning, the feeding, but our financial means, because of the crisis and because of interventional jurisdiction, was limited. We did everything in our capacity to help, but we shouldn't fool ourselves. We cannot replace the state, which, for reasons of its own, is absent from its role. The work of the state is substituted by non-government organizations, by the many volunteers, the Greek Red Cross, the social pharmacy and clinic of the municipality, anonymous citizens showing humanity, recording lacks and deficits, dashing to get tents, foodstuff, core items for them to be useful in these difficult times. The brightest of days are the days of humanity, the days when fellow citizens from the village and the overall area opened their homes and opened their arms to the refugee families and offered them their support, home-cooked food, a well-made bed, a warm bath, a place, a decent place for them to rest, for them to rest a while after many months of ordeal, having been scattered in the four corners of the world. Our people kissed the hands of the benefactors. They showed our fellow citizens pictures from their homeland, and they expressed their gratitudes with words, with gestures, and eyes welling up in tears. Eyes can speak 1,000 truths. It's a marvelous code. People needn't try hard to understand the grandeur of the human soul. However, the days to come would be bleak, uncertain, and the future would be uncertain for refugees and migrants. They're staying in Idomeni despite the conviction that the gates to freedom would open had an expiration date. On December 9, we have the first evacuation of Idomeni from migrants and refugees. All official agencies and all of us serving legal government exerted pressures in order to have the big camp evacuated, because we cannot fully support in terms of infrastructure. As I mentioned before, the state is absent and the situation formed there is very difficult indeed. Farmers complained, and they were right, that they had the farms encroached on because refugees had set up tents everywhere. This is the sowing period, and farmers cannot sow to have a harvest for next year. So asking farmers to be a little bit more patient cannot always be entertained. They do not accept it. Idomeni opened in December, and immigrants and refugees are now taken to reception centers in the north of Greece, but they'll come back. They'll come back like a torrent. A month after that, Idomeni will constitute again a life jacket of hope. And next to this, we'll have unofficial camps in the gas station of Veizis and new reception centers in Kavala and Herso at the end of February. The entirety of the Kilkis region was turned into a huge reception center, or camp rather, with uncontrollable consequences. The condition was desperate. Caravans of refugees and migrants came day and night, carrying with them the heavy burden of personal, tragic stories. The unofficial camp was deluged with people. We had the setting up of new tents every day, and of course these tents encroach on farms. The few residents of Idomeni were quite alarmed and concerned in view of the situation, the petty thefts that hadn't happened in the past, and people justified in the name of tolerance cannot be tolerated any longer. The entire village is very much afraid of delinquency and crime. Some people knock on the doors of people after midnight to ask for hospitality or for something else. So people lock their doors now, and at the crack of dawn, people of Idomeni see that they are missing wood, animals, equipment. There are houses whose proprietors are absent and they are occupied by migrants and refugees. They use furniture to burn. They leave the tap running on the way out, as if they are revenging. But who are they revenging? People accommodating them. Unknown people enter the building where the UNHCR is accommodated, and they take with them core items and other kinds of objects. There is vandalization of buildings. The railway station was occupied and escorted for 2.5 months by refugees wanting the borders to open. Then we have violence episodes that occur before our very eyes. There is a stone wall between the SWAT police and the refugees. Incidents that end up in people pulling out knives, and in extreme cases in gunshots, and they truly make our heart sink. All these conditions led to the municipality of Idomeni call for help and call for a rudimentary presence of the state. We have ministers, we have MEP parliamentarians, government officials that came to our area. They are duly informed and they proceed to making a statement showing their sympathy to the tragic circumstances of the refugees, but they do nothing practically. From our point of view, we organized rallies at the Bridge of Axios and popular assemblies, and we ask for the evacuation of Idomeni that accommodated more than 16,000 refugees and immigrants. Next to a little village, there is a huge refugee city with tents and shacks. We said to the best of our abilities and in every tone of voice that this is uncontrollable, this is desperate. These unhappy people need to be taken to organized reception centers because the living conditions in Idomeni, we said, are wretched and third world. And of course we expressed our protest because the rights and the freedoms of the residents of the village had been dramatically decreased, and now people are fearful and insecure for their life and property. The only consolation, because state aid is far away, comes from the parcels of love and solidarity that come from individual persons, from organizations, from people that cannot tolerate the sight of children in the mud, of people in the rain, waiting for the blankets to dry in the rain, people who wait in line for lines of more than 3 kilometers to get their daily food. It is something depicted in awful phenomena of exploitation, the trafficking of drugs, prostitution, trafficking of people to Skopje, the sale of core items at exorbitantly high prices in canteens, restaurants and outdoor markets that function near Idomeni. The third dramatic cycle of the refugee crisis was completed by the end of May with the operation of the final evacuation of the camp by organized forces of the Greek police. An important number of people were scattered to neighboring refugee centers. Other migrants that lack documents feared arrests, and therefore they hid in the vicinity in hills and mountains. Idomeni got empty, and with it humanitarian organizations went away. Every single infrastructure that reminded until yesterday the intense presence of refugees and migrants is torn apart. I tried to depict my experience in a condensed way, experience from the refugee situation in Idomeni. I truly cannot tell whether I approached the issue realistically or emotionally. I didn't hide anything. I didn't exaggerate at all. The only emotions that I didn't allow to overwhelm me during this adventure of mine was the sadness that gradually turned into anger. indignation, disillusionment for a tragedy that cannot be ignored, but unfortunately cannot be averted. Being uprooted from one's homeland is a very, very hard ordeal. And now what, you'll wonder? In theory, Idomeni stopped being the center of attention for the refugee crisis a while ago. Anything that was reminiscent of camps of refugees has disappeared. However, in the collective memory, the refugee situation is indelibly marked in the borderline of Idomeni, written indelibly with expectation and eagerness for the opening of borders, because the dream for freedom never came true. This long refugee route that ended up in Idomeni will be our beacon of memory, the road of refugees, with photographs, with objects that refugees collected and gave us, parts of the boat that brought them to our country, made of wood, their life jackets and other modest things that we kept to remember them by. And they'll remember that Idomeni was not just a stopover, it was a definitive landmark for their lives. The way forward will be our determined contribution to the new refugee memory that cannot be fitted in borders and new homes. I'll close my presentation by reciting a poem that was inspired by the musical school of Trikala. I stretched my home to a turn of the road, and I was covered by a little bit of sky. My yard is covered with grass, as my son wanted ever since he was a kid. And tomorrow, it's our birthday, and they'll give us 2 words for a gift. You are not desired, you're unwanted. For Idomeni, the last verse has never been real. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your lively and touching report. I think now it's time to listen to those where human rights policy, refugee policy should be actually all about, namely to protect them. We have 2 persons here with us on the panel, Mohammed Ali and Sediq Attaya. Mohammed was born and raised in Damascus, when I'm rightly informed, sorry, and has been in Piraeus for the last 5 months. We had also some talks yesterday. You have been studying English literature in Damascus, and you were not able, because of the war, to stop your studies. And I wanted to ask you to tell us how your experience is having to leave your country and coming to the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me here to tell about what we going through from back home Syria until now. The thing that forced me to leave Syria and to interrupt my education, because the young man, whatever where you are, if you are in government area or the other areas, if you are between 18 and 40, you should fight. You should be a soldier, whatever where you are. So if you don't want it to be a fighter, you should move or run away. And that's what I did. And after all what we saw in Syria and all the people here and all the world, I think they know what Syria is suffering of. I didn't accept that, so I choose to leave Syria, leave house, apartment, my room, everything. And now I am in tent under a bridge in port in Piraeus, in Athens here, rather than to stay in this situation in Syria or to live this every day or to be fighter to anyone. When the people arrive here to Greece, I think the first purpose was about to find the humanity, to find right education, more deeply things that what they had back in the last 5 years in Syria. So when we arrived here, we found the humanity in the people. We find it as people. They feel us, and they feel why we came for, what the reason that we came, and they treat us very good way. And I never felt here as outsider or refugee. They treat me as brother, as a family. So, but unfortunately, we couldn't find the humanity in the progress, in the program, in the EU program, if it's unification or relocation or asylum. It took from the people, from all the refugees, a long time already. They faces the winter, and they faces, as what she said, about the rain to be intense, and all of your stuff it's gonna be full of water, and you're gonna wait outside until to be dry again. And now they faces the summer and the sun and the hot weather, and standing every day in lines to get them food. Find it difficult to have a shower or to clean your clothes. That's what we are suffering of now. So we suffered back home the last 5 years, and now we're still suffering. So I would love to remind again about that should EU be more engaged, more involved in this situation to find really deep solution. And also I want to talk about if they want to take people safely from Turkey or from Lebanon or from Jordan, from the camps, the people would love to be here, but just make it easily and faster, because the people, they don't have a long time. They already spend a long time. So we should do it now and too soon. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Sediq, may I ask you to tell us about your story, how it happened that you had to leave Afghanistan, and how your journey to Greece was. Thank you.
In the name of Allah, thanks that I got, I'm really thankful that you guys got me time to talk right here and speak right here. So I start my journey from Afghanistan. I'm from Kabul, so my name is Mohammed Sidique, and I have been working for International Security Assistance Force and NATO for 3 years. That's why I left Afghanistan, and I start my journey about 5 months ago, and 5 months or perhaps 6 months. And I got first Iran, then Iran, Turkey, then Turkey, I got Greece. So of course during my trip I faced a serious threat, and it was really hard, and it was my first time that I start my trip, and so it was really danger, and the people are was really in bad situation, and there was people mother with their sons, and people ladies, children's, male, female, and lots of people, and they try by different ways, and they came by mountain, and they spend their time in the mountain, and which was very hard. And so when I got Iran, so we spent time about 20 hours, so in mountain, and which was really hard, and the weather was really cold, and the people there was children, there was lady with their son, and there was lots of people, and as they like they lived their life because of like the situation, or the situation was like really bad on their countries. So that's why they start their journeys. And like when I got like Iran, then so I got Turkey, then I got like Greece. When I got like Ireland of like Greece, Samos for the first time, so we've been right there for 4 weeks, and the first week was like all right. When you get like after 1 week, the military got like the responsibility of the camp, and the camp got like kind of closed camp, and the people was like really kind of disappointed, and they want like they left like their past, they left their countries, they left their homeland, and they left their family to be like get like or to have good future and better future. And when they got right here, and they were like in close camp, and there was like they had like foods and kind of shower and clothes, and but they felt like they were like at the jail, and it was kind of really, and like the people was like disappointed. And so when after like my 4 weeks, yeah, then I got like Athens. So since I'm right here, so in Athens, so I try to help people like to translate like for volunteers for different NGO, and helping people around, and helping like for like food distribution and kitchen, and as much as I can. So I'm really glad to be helpful for the people and for different NGO and for different like organization. Then like when we got like here, like I came to the port Piraeus. So the life conditions right here, so since I have been like in Piraeus and port, so not really good, and the people are staying like under tent, and like there is not shadow, and so right now the people are staying like under bridge, and which is like completely not good. And they came right here, they left their past to get like to have like better like life, or to live like in better like in better place. And they're like kind of literally like dizzy, and so they're not getting like good food, and they're like there's no good shower, and like they're getting like foods, and which like the people are not like happy from the food and from like the life conditional and from tent. So and they don't have like information about their future, so they're looking forward. So what's next? And nobody is giving them like information. What is next? And they just stuck like right here in Greece, and they're trying to go out from here like to other countries or to other like EU countries, and they're like still right here. And if like actually there is no illegal way, like legal way to go to the other EU countries, that's why they're trying to go by illegal way, and it opened like illegal way for the people and for the refugees. So if you find a solution, or if like there will be like a way legal, so they never try by illegal way, or they never like pay for the smuggler. So that's why like the countries, or I mean like they has like different policy, and that's why like the people are like paying for smugglers, and like they made like for smugglers like huge business, and they're getting like heavy, like they're getting money, and they have good business, like so. And the people also has to like they're looking for like good better life. They need to like make money, they need to educate, or they need to study, or they need to like they need to have like house or whatever. And that's why they're trying to go out from here. And so if they're like the people like I mean right here in they're staying like in different camps, or like lots of people like in like small place, and that's why they are fighting. And as we are like witness, or we are like seeing or watching like in social media, so like the refugee being killed by other refugee, and so like lots of fighting like in food distribution, or like there is not good manage or there is not good management like to manage the refugees, and so thanks very much.